so interested in what you saw when you went in the military as opposed to what you see today. And is today's option a good option for young people of color to enlist? So, what do you think about from the time you went in, how military service has changed and how people of color are now maybe getting better positions and high authoritative positions in the military? Is it a good bet again for our young people? So just tell us your name and tell us your branch of service and how long you served, and look at a question that says, when I went in, it was this way. Today, it's like this. Is that a good option for our children to think on?
Okay, Lou. So, Fran Allen. I went in 1975. I was 18 years old. There was 40 years. 40 years have passed. A little more than 40 years have passed. 40 years ago when I went in, the Marine Corps was a really hard place to be. It was just tough for no good reason. It was just hard. Okay. Now, 40 years later, they have technology. And that makes things easier. So the things that they can do so easy now, we didn't have the technology. It had not been created yet. There were no cell phones, there were no tablets, there were no laptops, there were no computers, there were no telephones, period. We were still operating on a can and a string. I mean, seriously, come on. So, but 40 years later, is it a good option? Yes, because I don't care when you start. Discipline is something that is good to get at any time. No matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, no matter what your goals are, you're not going to get there if you have no discipline. And discipline 40 years ago is the same as discipline today.
It's needed.
Okay? And
for sure.
you have to be focused on what it is that you're trying to achieve. And that's the thing that the military gave to me. The ability to figure out what I wanted and then to put my head down and not stop until I got where I was going.
And that's where that confidence came in at. Because you said it helped you with your self-confidence. And a lot of our young people, they don't necessarily have a lot of confidence because they're not mastering the academic side of school, and sometimes peer pressure. And as we know, youth suicide as well as military veteran suicide is now the increasing numbers for suicide, and that's why they do have a suicide prevention number. But as you say, Fran, it did a lot of things for you at that time. I can just imagine you, 18 years old, black female, going into boot camp. I can just imagine what that was like.
It was crazy.
But today, 40 years later, do you feel that the Marine Corps now is a good option for young people?
Yes, because if you can't learn discipline and leadership in the Marine Corps, you cannot learn it.
No, for sure. I'm sure. Because I see those instructors. So now we're going to go to the Navy. I'm so glad I got it. Look at this. This is beautiful. We have Marines. We have Navy. And my Air Force man just came in, and the captain is over there looking as pretty as ever. Come on. I'll tell you. Come on, young man. This is Jason Richardson, 12 years, active duty still, United States Navy. Talk about, thank you. Talk about when you went in. You've been there 12 years now. The experiences that you had over the 12 years, which you say, come, young people, if you don't have any other options, this is a viable option in the United States Navy.
Absolutely. It's, I think you mentioned it earlier, I believe you might have mentioned it earlier about getting out of Baltimore. Not just Baltimore, any city. Like I said, where I was from was not the best neighborhood around, and every city naturally has them. But I never would have changed the way I did if I wouldn't have actually joined, because it took me out of the city. I got to see a different culture, a different state, a different country, and broaden my entire spectrum on it. I wasn't so isolated and fixated on, I need to protect me and do me. I do understand better now that a lot of people actually have these things. Coming from a youthful environment, I didn't have... I'm sorry. We got a bit more technology than that.
Yeah, don't be rubbing it in. And I'm still older than you. Respect your elders, young blood.
Yes, ma'am. But no, the technology still is evolving, and the interesting thing is a lot of the things children are doing now, or just youth are doing now, just in high school and college. It's some of the very same tools that we're using out there. And I love that you highlighted on confidence, because as I said, when I joined, it taught me all about team building. It taught me about how to be part of a team rather than just looking out for myself and, you know, trying to step on the next person. Because the reality is most of our communities are like a barrel of crabs. We're too busy stepping on each other to try to step up. So it's kind of hard to get up if you're too busy being dragged down by the next one.
Yep.
When you join, it's not that way. You literally, as the captain mentioned, how she had to do push-ups for her partner. You literally rise as a team or you fall as one. There's no middle ground.
Leave no man behind.
Yes,
right.
and the success of those things really builds a lot of self-confidence because you can see how important you are to everyone around you. I think a lot of communities right now are not really seeing how much just one individual can be different. But when you get one individual who does something good, they actually see it for themselves. They'll inspire others to do just the same.
Folks, this is BDX Live. We're talking with members, retired, some retired, but we still have an active duty person in the studio. We have Army, we have Air Force, we have Navy, and the Marines in the studio. This is awesome. Praise God. And while we were talking, I tell you what it made me think about. I often do tours to Annapolis with young people in the schools. And one of the tour sites that many people may not think of as being a tour site is the United States Naval Academy. And so I've taken Douglas High School students and other high school students to that particular institution, and they are awesomely, they're just amazed at what they see there. And it has encouraged some of them to apply and to get into the Naval Academy. So thank you for your service, and we're going to turn our attention now to, some say, the best dressed of all, the United States Air Force. The flymen, the guys with the eagles on their chest and on their wings and shoulders. And in the studio to represent is my good friend, our supporter, Derek A. Burnett. Am I saying that right?
Correct.
Because I got the Burkett guy. He's one of my best buddies. We always running together. And he's going to talk about his military time, but let's talk a little bit first about his firm, which is Pure Solar Systems for residential, commercial, churches, nonprofits, solar farms, and how you can use God's own natural sunlight to heat your home.
Well, I tell you what, let's continue with the theme. We can do
Okay.
that later.
Okay, very
I'm
good.
just going to speak from the Air Force perspective.
Thank you, sir.
I'm a third-generation veteran. My grandfather was in the Army. My father was 26 years, senior master sergeant in the Army. I was basically an Army brat, so we did a lot of traveling. About every 3 years, I lived in a different location. I got a brother born in Maine, I got a brother born in Georgia, and I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. So,
Sorry about that game yesterday, man. Kind of a little painful. No, a little painful. Huh? I ain't mean to rub it in, but
I've been here for 40 years. So
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
a Ravens fan.
All right.
So, I was exposed to the opportunities that the military could provide you because I grew up around it. And I grew up in a disciplined atmosphere. My father was a drill sergeant before he was a recruiting sergeant.
Ooh.
So we had 3 boys, and we never stepped out of line. And it was something to see my father dress somebody up and down in the middle of the street, because they was incorrect. And then I would go back to my sheepish ways. But anyway, moving right along, it was a great experience for me. I did it after college. I got a degree in architecture from Hampton University, and I was always looking for a way to be a part of the Air Force. So I joined the Air National Guard here in Maryland, 235th Civil Engineering Unit, as a part of the 175th TAG group out at Middle River Airport. While I was in there, I was a civil engineering officer. So I've probably done projects in about 7 different countries throughout the world, engineering and architecture, because we had this little specific group. Anytime they had a specific project, I had 3 full-bird colonels in my unit. So we would do specific projects that the Army or the Air Force would need. We would design them, do construction management all over the country. So it was a great experience for me. I was working with the Army Corps of Engineers as a civilian employee. So I was getting paid twice. When I go away for military, my 2 weeks during the summer, I got a check from the Army Corps because I was military. And I got a check from Air National Guard because I was military. Some guys in the office ain't like that, but hey.
We haven't even talked about that part of it, the compensation part. It's a guaranteed check.
That's what it was, guaranteed check. Yeah, and another reason I got into it, because it gave me an opportunity to have extra money to pay my school loan off. So that's exactly what I did. You know, I paid my school loan off. I became free. But on the long run, the bigger picture was being an architect, architectural engineer. I wanted to start my own design and construction company. And I felt like working for the Army Corps from the federal standpoint would give me federal experience. And then working from the Air Force from the state would give me state experience. So that would enhance my total vision and purpose of developing my own business. So it was a win-win for me all the way around. The only reason I left, I didn't do 20. I did 12, and God said, well, why didn't you stay for the last 8? But my weekends was precious to me. I wanted to spend time with my kids. You know, I coached a lot of football, baseball, basketball. My kids was getting up to age where Dad wanted to be around, you know. And sometimes you go away to those activities in the Air Force, wherever you may be. Like, man, I'd rather be home. I ain't want to be here.
Yeah.
I'm on here for the money, to be honest. But even though it was a great experience, so I just made a hard choice. I said, I got to go. And I thought it was a great choice because I got to spend that much more time with my son and my daughter. Both are now college graduates. Both live in Charlotte. So I think it was a great trade.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Derek. And let's get our captain, and then we'll get back in before we close out. And we have a minute before break, so we're going to get to our captain, and then we'll get back and we'll talk other things you folks are doing with your lives after the military. But let's go to Captain. I'm going to say Captain. Tell us about your career there, Captain Hustler.
Sure, Captain Hustler. So basically, like I said, I actually went in, at the age of 17 while I was in college and was able to pretty much learn a little bit about the military. And to your point, I was in the reserves, and it was always at the most inopportune time. So that's why when I came out the Army, I decided not to go back in the reserves. But I ended up going in, active duty for 7 years. My 2 tours in Germany is primarily what my career consisted of. So while it did allow me the opportunity to travel to many, many countries, and I had a very quick, short pace, just fast career. I mean, I was ranking, they say, everything went well, and I would tell anybody that, it really is up to you and what your decision is in terms of what your goals are. If you're someone that's looking to try to get yourself out of debt, probably not the route to go. To your point earlier, compensation. There's so much that I know today. Knowing what I know now, I probably would have made some different types of decisions around whether I would go in, simply because, technology is here today, and there's so many, entrepreneurial type opportunities today that we didn't have when I went in. So if I knowing what I know now, I probably would not have, simply because one of the reasons why I went was for compensation, because I needed to make sure I paid back my student loans and things of that nature. While it did give me an opportunity to, be a leader, and it helped me with my confidence, and it helped me, to grow as a person, I could have grown, at a faster, at just as fast as pace as going into the military, because I would have been able to still make the money, but still be able to learn, today what entrepreneurs do, which to me, they are light years ahead. Millennials are making millions now, where we didn't make that, you know what I mean?
Well,
and so
there's a reason for that.
There's a reason, yeah. And so the technology age that we're in today is so much different. Now, if you want to go in because you want to be a whole about your country and you want to fight for your country, and that's great. But for most of us that went in because we want to pay back our student loans and things of that nature, we have too many options today outside of that, right? So would I go in today knowing what I know now? Probably not. But I wouldn't tell somebody else not to, because it does give you the great foundation that you need in terms of discipline and leadership and confidence and responsibility and accountability. I would still do that for those particular reasons. But there's just too many options.
It surely be standing on the corner.
It does.
I can tell you that.
It does.
And also, the other thing is, if in fact we know that maybe, this is conservatively, 75% of African Americans are not going to college. It's just that simple. And of those that go, less than 25% even graduate. And so when you look at what is being offered in 2019 and 2020, it's a few options out there. Back in the day when I came out of high school, we had to register. It was no volunteering. You turned 18. Before that 18th birthday or soon after, you go into what was called the selective service. And you putting your name down. And that way they would have the roster of who could be recruited. And now this is during the Vietnam War time period, 68, 69, where a lot of my classmates and peers did go in service. Some of them did not go, did not come back. And then others like myself, we went into working for the federal government. And that's what I did. I worked for Social Security and all that kind of stuff, post office and everything else. But now today, when we look at the racial climate of the military, it may well be different from what you experienced in your years and even you, but that's how you get to where you are without having to go through some of the things they might have seen. So Derek, as our Air Force representative, let's talk a little bit about the time and the year when you went in, and what was the racial climate, particularly with your superiors and even your peers? What was the racial climate?
Well, I went in, it was fall of 85.
Okay.
Fall of 85. So I was in the engineering unit. Naturally, I'm not going to say naturally, but I was the only African American in my unit, my engineering unit. I could count the African American officers on base at the time, one of which is a very good friend of mine, Kevin Murray, Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Murray. Retired. He stayed in, he retired. Lieutenant Colonel, worked for the IRS, did very well. Another one was at the time, I was a captain. She was a lieutenant colonel. Her name is Allison Solomon. She's most recently the first African American lieutenant general for the Air National Guard. So she became a general. I just came from a Veterans Day ceremony down at War Memorial Plaza. And the second Army general is Linda Singh.
Yes, who just retired.
So we had two female Army generals now in charge of Air National Guard, Army National Guard. So the opportunities are available. It's just whether or not you want to commit and apply yourself accordingly. And as it relates to technology, man, technology is the skill set that you're going to get depending on the direction you take from a hands-on experience is probably best than anything out there. Plus, you can get paid while you acquire skill.
Yep.
I know you can come out of the Air Force, if you're in the cybersecurity industry, with the cybersecurity certification and clearance, you'll make $85,000, $90,000. You ain't set a foot in a college classroom.
Right. Entry level.
You know, entry level, but you got that certification. You know, you got that Army background, so opportunities are there. It's just up to the youth nowadays, whether or not what you want to do.
Folks, it's 2:35. Did we take a 2:30 break? Oh, no, we hadn't taken a break. We're going to take our break. We'll be right back, folks. This is a great conversation, man.